Hey everybody, Derek here with Fund Center TV, part of the FEC network. Thanks for stopping by. Today we're talking about startup, more specifically funding, the good, the bad, and the where is it?
Bandwidth for this webcast is brought to you by Creative Works, delivering the wow effect one client at a time. See them on the web at thewoweffect.com.
You've heard me say it before, there are two rocks on the road for every developer, location and funding. And for most of us, funding is the big one. I thought I'd put together a short podcast specifically focused on finding funding and the challenges thereof. Not that we need to be reminded of the challenges, I think most of us are very familiar with that part, but the reality of options and how most fund centers pull together their seed capital and the full funding package. Having been in this business since '95, I've worked with a lot of industry professionals, great business people, and successful business entrepreneurs. The number one character trait that I've seen in all of them has been persistence. No, actually, attitude and persistence. And for startups, I think this is a lesson well learned, especially if your new fund center business requires funding. I spoke recently with a new amusement developer who finished his business plan and took it to 19 banks before he found one that demonstrated interest. 19 banks. Talk about persistence. Although we're seeing projects get funded in this current economic environment, I'm hearing from those in the process of raising capital that many banks are still not seriously looking at startups. And those who are require at minimum 20 to 30% self-invested. For those new business entrepreneurs who have a great plan, a viable market, and the capacity to make the project successful, how frustrating it can be to find the necessary capital to get started. So, what are the options? When it comes to funding your startup, there are only a couple of real options. Let's start with the bad news. If you're looking for grants, you've got a long road in front of you. In all the years I've been doing this, I've come across one or two situations where local grant money was available. However, in these very rare cases, the amounts are typically under 25 grand and attached to specific requirements for hiring and operations. Most often, if grant money is available, it's mostly available for nonprofits or non-retail business, such as farms, small manufacturing, high-tech innovators, and maybe some small community-specific resource centers. The reality of finding free money or community grants, even state or federal grants for a fund center business in most cases is just not there. Which reminds me of another situation new business entrepreneurs need to be considerate of. I hate seeing people get ripped off. If you run into a grant writer who promises to get you all kinds of free money, knows where the best grants are hidden, etc., then asks for a deposit to get started, I'd be suspicious. Tell them you'll gladly pay them off the back end once grant funding has been secured. I think you'll find they'll disappear on you. Having said all of that, I always encourage those in our Startup Academy program to explore every possible opportunity of funding. Just don't hang your entire fund center dream on finding grants. If your experience says otherwise, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear about your challenges and successes with finding funding. Although grant money is rare, there are great programs for minorities, veterans, women-owned businesses, many of which can be discovered by a click on over to the Small Business Administration website, sba.gov. The link is in the show notes. Getting out and connecting with your local province, county or state-sponsored small business center or chamber of commerce can also be very productive. A little community networking can't hurt. But at the end of the day, my experience tells me that when it comes to financing your new startup, the choices are debt financing, equity financing, or maybe a combination of the two. Simply put, debt financing is you getting a loan from someone or some kind of financial institution. Equity financing is you giving up part of your business in return for an invested amount, and for both parties, a hope that down the road, profits will generate an owner buyout and a return on that investor's equity. We can also add venture capital in the mix, as this is usually some form of equity investment. However, this too, in my experience, is a long road to travel, not because venture capital is not available, but because this type of investor is typically looking for a much larger return than what your average family fund center can provide. Good fund center operators gross 18 to 28% before tax. Unless you're a Six Flags or Dave Buster's or other multi-acre attraction, the average community-based fund center doesn't drive enough revenue to appeal to venture capital. And again, this is just my experience. If yours has been otherwise, let us know in the comments. One other source of startup funding that comes up when speaking with a lot of people is angel investors. These are typically very successful people that are like-minded and find a similar need or interest in starting something locally for the community. They may be serial entrepreneurs and enjoy the startup process and working as a mentor with new entrepreneurs. And in addition to capital, they bring a lot of business experience and expertise. Angel investors may look at your project with interest as either debt or equity investment, depending on how you structure the offer and the business. They may also approach you and your project as an altruistic community opportunity that meshes with their own sense of community pride and welfare. We get into more detail of attracting angel investors in the Startup Academy program. In these days of internet and crowdsourcing, a new breed of funding opportunity has emerged: crowdfunding. With sites like Kickstarter and Fundraiser helping hundreds of new businesses get off the ground. However, a recent search on Kickstarter found 3 fund center projects, none of which had acquired any amount of real funding. I think this speaks to the primary challenge with fund center investors. They need to be local. They need to feel attached to you and the project. I mean, what are you going to offer crowdfunders? A t-shirt, annual membership? I don't think this is going to turn out to be a viable way of raising money for your fund center. But then again, every stone turned may offer a new path. However, my experience tells us that raising capital for a fund center is a boots on the ground, passionate pitch with explicit materials and planning that can clearly demonstrate potential in both the project and you as the man or woman to invest in. Which leads us nicely to the final, last, and only option for 90% of the new fund centers looking for seed capital: family, friends, and business associates. These are people that can hear your story, they can see and feel your passion, and be a part of its success. In upcoming podcasts, we'll take a closer look at getting started with the resources you may not currently realize you have. You, your friends, family, and associates. I hope this episode has been insightful. If you have experience in the funding trenches, good, bad, or otherwise, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. If you have specific questions or want to discuss your project and how to get started, feel free to call on us anytime. And if you stop by our Facebook page and say hello, I'll send you a copy of our 10-paged FEC business guide. For more resources and startup support, stop by the Fund Center Academy. Thanks for watching. Until next time, keep moving forward.